The divorce papers were still warm when Daniel and Vanessa lifted their glasses. "To freedom," Vanessa said, her red lipstick smudged on the rim of her champagne flute. "To new beginnings," Daniel added, flashing that fake smile he'd worn so often during our marriage. He didn't even glance at me. I stood quietly near the door of the private dining room. My name had just been wiped off a marriage license. And they were already celebrating. In the same restaurant where Daniel had proposed to me. The irony wasn't lost on me. A dozen people sat around the long table. Daniel's team. Vanessa's PR friends. A couple of clout-chasing influencers pretending not to take selfies. Everyone was dressed like it was a holiday. The only one out of place was me. Vanessa leaned into Daniel's shoulder. "You're finally free from that boring housewife." I smiled politely. She didn't know I heard her. I looked around the room. At the man I once trusted and the woman he cheated with openly now. Shamelessly. She was wearing a silver satin dress, barely covering her chest. Her long blonde hair curled into fake innocence. Daniel looked pleased. Rich. In control. But he wouldn't for long. I had come today for one reason, to let them see me walk away. I'd played the quiet wife for 3 years. No tantrums. No scenes. I smiled at the fundraisers. Wore the perfect dress at company galas. And disappeared whenever Daniel needed me to. He thought I had no power. He thought wrong. Across the room, someone laughed too loud. One of Daniel's buddies. Raising a glass. To Daniel, the smartest man in the room. Newly divorced and already leveling up. "Damn right," someone else said. "He got the girl and kept the company." Clean break. That's when Kevin burst into the room. Kevin was Daniel's assistant. Young. Always anxious. Always sweating. Today, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Daniel," he panted. Loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's bad. Really bad." The room fell quiet. Daniel frowned. "What the hell are you doing?" "We're celebrating." Kevin ignored the champagne. His hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone. "Morgan Holdings just released a statement," he said. "They're pulling out of the Eden Tech deal. Effective immediately." Daniel's face went pale. "What?" he snapped. Kevin turned the screen toward him. "Your main investor, Claire's father, he just withdrew all funding. It's all over the news." Vanessa blinked. "Wait. What do you mean Claire's father?" Kevin hesitated. Eyes wide. "Claire Morgan. That Claire. Daniel's ex-wife. She's the daughter of Richard Morgan." Vanessa's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Everyone stared at me. I didn't flinch. Daniel looked like he'd been hit in the chest. "No. That's not possible. Claire's father is a retired professor or something." "No," I said calmly, stepping forward. "That's the story you believed. The one I let you believe." He opened his mouth. But nothing came out. "Why would you?" Vanessa began. But I cut her off with a glance. "I didn't hide anything. You just never asked." The room was dead silent. Kevin cleared his throat again. "Eden Tech's stock is crashing. The board is in emergency session. Legal wants you back in the office. Now." Daniel still hadn't moved. I turned to leave. I didn't need to say anything else. The headlines, the board, the balance sheets, they do all the talking for me. As I walked out, I heard Vanessa's voice crack. "She's the reason your company's gone? That boring woman?" No one stopped me. Outside, the sky was bright. Unreasonably clear. The valet brought my car around without a word. A sleek black Tesla. Not the modest sedan I drove during the marriage. Daniel never noticed I'd changed it last month. He never noticed much at all. I got in, closed the door, and drove off. No tears. No regrets. Only the beginning. By the time I reached the office, Eden Tech was already trending for all the wrong reasons. Billionaire investor pulls plug on startup CEO after divorce drama. Claire Morgan's surprise identity shakes tech industry. From trophy wife to power player, who is Claire Morgan? I didn't post. I didn't comment. I didn't even scroll. I didn't need to. Everything was going exactly as planned. At the red light, I checked the message Grace had sent me. Board meeting in 15. They're eating each other alive. Grace wasn't just my best friend. She was my quiet partner in everything that mattered. And she hated Daniel even more than I did. I parked in the underground garage of Morgan Group's Midtown building and took the elevator to the 23rd floor. Natalie, my older sister, was already waiting. Dressed in a navy suit. Heels sharper than her attitude. "You're late," she said. I like to make an entrance. Natalie raised an eyebrow. "You just blew up your ex-husband's life in public." That entrance was handled. We walked side by side down the hall. She didn't ask if I was okay. She knew I didn't want sympathy. "You sure you want to sit in on the Eden Tech call?" she asked as we reached the boardroom. "I want to hear them squirm." Natalie smirked. Spoken like a Morgan. Inside the room, a dozen men in expensive suits were mid-crisis. Legal teams on one side, finance on the other. Daniel wasn't there, but his name was on everyone's lips. "We'll stabilize within the quarter. The funding gap's too wide. His leadership credibility is dead. No investor's going to stay." I sat down at the far end of the table. Silence fell immediately. One man, clearly the CFO, cleared his throat. "Miss Morgan, we weren't expecting. You should have," I said simply. He swallowed hard. "We understand the decision from your father's office. But we're hoping there's room for a dialogue." The Eden Tech partnership was significant for both sides. Natalie folded her arms. "Not anymore. We had no idea about the personal relationship between you and Mr. Grant," another board member said. "Had we known, you would have done nothing." I cut in. Just like when Daniel funneled marketing funds into influencer deals that conveniently promoted Vanessa's personal brand. The room tensed. I leaned back. "Don't bother denying it. We've already flagged it with the SEC." They looked at each other. Shifting eyes. No rebuttals. Natalie tapped her nails against the table. "Let's make this short. Morgan Holdings is out. Permanently. Claire will be repurposing that capital elsewhere. And," I added, "we'll be issuing a public statement confirming that the withdrawal was tied to breaches of ethical and financial oversight." "You're going to destroy the company," one man said, almost desperate. "It destroyed itself," I replied. "I'm just letting the light in." We stood to leave. No one followed us. Back in the elevator, Natalie glanced sideways. "You know he's going to come crawling, right? He can crawl all he wants." "I'm not watching." She didn't smile, but I could tell she wanted to. Downstairs, Grace was waiting in the lobby with a smug look and 2 iced coffees. "How'd it go?" she asked. "They're in meltdown mode." "Good." She handed me 1 cup. "You ready for phase 2? I took a sip. More than ready. That evening, the second wave hit. News outlets ran side-by-side photos of me and Vanessa. Headlines screamed, "Ex-wife turns out to be billionaire heiress, mistress blindsided. Vanessa Brooks dumped by brands amid financial scandal." Guess who just got unfollowed by half the internet? Vanessa's sponsorships started dropping one by one. First a beauty brand, then a wellness app, then the fashion startup she kept bragging about launching with Daniel's vision. All gone. She posted a shaky story claiming she was stepping away to heal. The comments weren't kind. Heal from what? Being exposed? That's what you get when you pick a man for clout. Claire ate and left no crumbs. I didn't like the internet much, but I had to admit, they understood timing. I turned off my phone and opened my laptop. Grace had sent over the asset documents Daniel once tried to bury. There were 3 shell companies tied to his name, all poorly hidden. Each one had legal gaps I could now expose with a single press release. But I didn't send it. Not yet. I wanted Daniel to make the next move. Because desperation reveals true character, and I wanted to see exactly who he'd become when there was no one left to blame. 3 days after the announcement, Daniel showed up at my office uninvited. He looked nothing like the man from the champagne celebration. The tailored suit was wrinkled. His hair was disheveled. And the confidence he once wore like a shield had cracked. "Claire," he said to the receptionist, out of breath. "I need to see her." I was in a strategy meeting with Grace and our new design lead. But the second I saw the look on our assistant's face, I knew. "He's downstairs," she whispered. Grace didn't even look up. "Tell security to give him 5 minutes before they escort him out." "I'll handle it," I said. I stepped into the hallway just as Daniel reached the glass doors to our floor. He paused when he saw me. "I just want to talk," he said, voice hoarse. "Please." I didn't answer. I nodded to the assistant behind me and we moved to one of the private meeting rooms. Inside, Daniel paced like a man who no longer had a place to stand still. "You didn't have to do all this," he said, gesturing vaguely. "Pulling funding, going public, letting your sister drag my name through the media. You dragged yourself," I said. He stopped pacing. "I didn't know who you were," he said. "You never told me. You never asked," I replied. He sat down across from me, folding his hands like he used to during investor pitches, trying to play humble. "Claire," he said slowly, "I messed up. I know that. But Eden Tech, it wasn't just about me. There were people, jobs, real work being done. And now they're paying for your arrogance," I said. "Not mine." He stared at the table. "I can fix it," he muttered. "I just need a chance." "And what exactly are you asking me for, Daniel?" I leaned forward slightly. "Another loan? A press statement? Sympathy?" "I'm asking you to talk to your father." I almost laughed. "You want me to ask Richard Morgan to reinvest in the company you just ran into the ground? After divorcing his daughter and parading your mistress through the media?" His mouth opened, then shut again. He looked lost. "I was wrong," he whispered. I stood up. "This isn't about wrong or right anymore. It's about consequences." I opened the door. "We're done here." As he walked out, shoulders sagging, he looked back once. "You don't even care anymore, do you?" I didn't respond. I went back into the meeting room. Grace raised an eyebrow. "He beg yet?" she asked. Almost cried. She snorted. "They always do." Later that evening, Natalie sent me a photo. It was of Vanessa, caught on camera leaving a hotel lobby alone. Crying. No makeup. Hair tied in a messy bun. The caption from the gossip site read, "Vanessa Brooks, no job. No brand. No backup plan." Underneath was a quote from an unnamed source. "Daniel's cut her off. She's on her own." Grace forwarded the photo in a group chat. "Is it bad that I'm enjoying this too much?" I didn't reply. I wasn't celebrating. Not really. This wasn't joy. It was closure. The next morning, Daniel's name was removed from Eden Tech's executive page. A brief statement said he had stepped down for personal reasons. I knew what came next. The scramble. The phone calls. The desperate attempts to reposition himself in an industry that no longer wanted him. And I knew where he would land, exactly where people like him always did. At the mercy of someone smarter, colder, and less forgiving than he expected. I just didn't know it would be me. Not yet. Before Daniel, I had a different name. Not legally, Claire Morgan was always mine, but socially, professionally, publicly, I was Daniel's wife. The plus one. The background support system. He never knew how much I gave up to stay invisible. Back when we first got married, I asked my father not to announce it. I didn't want headlines or boardroom whispers. I wanted something quiet. Something real. Naive. Looking back, are you sure you want to give up the Morgan name for this guy? Natalie had asked. She'd looked at Daniel once and filed him away instantly ambitious. Slick. Just smart enough to be dangerous. I love him, I'd said. She hadn't replied. Just blinked like I'd confessed something shameful. At the time, Daniel didn't even know the full scope of our family's wealth. He just knew I lived comfortably, came from a good family, and didn't ask for anything. I had no title, no flashy job, no visible role in any of the Morgan companies. That was on purpose. I was trying to build a life with him that didn't rely on who I was. He used that privacy to erase me. Board dinners where I was seated at the far end. Company bios that mentioned his incredible support system at home, without naming me. Parties where Vanessa introduced herself as Daniel's creative director while I stood by the hors d'oeuvres, smiling like it didn't bother me. I let it slide. Until the messages started. One of his coworkers accidentally sent me a text meant for someone else, screenshots of Daniel and Vanessa at a private resort in Cabo, posing like a couple. The message said, "They're finally official." I didn't reply. Instead, I began collecting bank statements, calendar screenshots, travel logs, names on invoices, social tags, flight itineraries. Slowly, methodically, like building a case in court. Grace helped me create a burner cloud account. We called it Project Exit. Back then, I hadn't decided to destroy him. I'd only planned to leave. But Daniel gave me reason to reconsider. A week after I confronted him about Vanessa, he offered me money to keep it quiet. I'll transfer the condo into your name. And the Audi. Just don't make this messy. Messy. That word stayed with me. He thought I was a scandal to manage. A loose end to tie up with real estate and a car. That night, I went to my father. He listened quietly. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "It's your call. But whatever you choose to do, you won't do it alone." And I didn't. Natalie mobilized the internal legal team. Grace did the digital cleanup. I pulled the trigger in court. And now here we were. Daniel had been removed from Eden Tech. Vanessa was crumbling under the weight of her own brand image. The media had shifted its tone, no longer mocking me for being the wife who got left, but analyzing how they missed the signs that I wasn't just some quiet spouse. I wasn't planning revenge when I started. But once it started working, I didn't stop. One morning, Grace sent me a draft pitch deck. At the top, Morgan Futures, female-led venture division. "What's this?" I asked. She shrugged. "Something new. Something with your name on it. This time." I stared at the title. My name. At the top. No one else's. "You want in?" she asked. I smiled. Absolutely. The first time Daniel saw the new pitch deck, he didn't know it was mine. It was presented through a third-party firm. Just another promising startup proposal among dozens in his inbox, until he saw the name at the bottom. Morgan Futures. He stared at it for a full minute. According to Grace, who had someone inside Eden Tech feeding her updates. She forwarded me the message. "He's spiraling." Called an emergency meeting. Asked if this is some kind of joke. It wasn't. Morgan Futures wasn't just a company. It was a statement. a division I was now co-running with Grace and Natalie, focused on investing in female-led startups that had been rejected by the very circles Daniel once controlled. "I want it to hurt," Natalie said during one of our planning calls. "It will," I replied. Grace added the finishing touch. We made sure to schedule our launch for the same day. Vanessa had a panel booked for her personal brand talk, sponsored by one of the last lifestyle apps still clinging to her name. They dropped her the morning of our launch, due to recent conflicts in values. "We are no longer working with MS. Brooks," the company said in a one-line tweet. Vanessa posted a story an hour later, saying she was taking a break from social media to reset and focus. No one cared. That night, I attended our launch event in a navy blue pantsuit. Hair swept back. No jewelry. Just me. Clean. Clear. I wasn't the woman Daniel had once married. I wasn't the woman who waited for him to come home from meetings that went late. I wasn't the woman who smiled through charity galas while he made promises to other women. I was the woman he couldn't control anymore. We gave a short speech, introduced our founding partners, and confirmed our first 3 investments, all women whose previous ideas had been dismissed for being too niche, too soft, or not scalable. All of them profitable within 6 months. The press coverage was sharp. Morgan heiress steps into spotlight and brings others with her. Claire Morgan reclaims her name and launches a new era. This is what moving on looks like, and it's brutal. Daniel didn't show up. But he saw everything. I knew because he tried calling again. The number came through as unknown. But I recognized the hesitation in the ring. He let it buzz twice, then hung up. Grace texted. "He's drowning in his own silence." Natalie texted right after. Vanessa just deleted all her accounts. Again. I didn't respond to either. I was too busy. The next morning, Daniel emailed me. Subject, closure? I didn't open it. Instead, I archived it and flagged it for legal in case he tried anything stupid. I didn't need closure. I needed space. And I had it now. That afternoon, I met with a new startup founder, young, sharp, underestimated. She reminded me of myself 5 years ago, full of ideas and constantly being talked over in rooms full of men who thought they were doing her a favor just by listening. She pitched clean, confident, no fluff. When she finished, I stood and shook her hand. "You're funded," I said. She blinked. "Just like that?" "Just like that. No strings. No husband whispering over my shoulder. No decisions made in someone else's name. I wasn't reclaiming a legacy. I was building something new." The email Daniel sent sat unread in my archive for over a week. Subject line, closure? No follow-up. No second try. Which, frankly, surprised me. I thought he'd come knocking louder. But apparently, he was too busy surviving. Grace forwarded me a blog post from a mid-tier tech outlet. The title said it all. From Power Player to Blacklist, The Fall of Daniel Grant. It was brutal. Line after line detailed how investors had quietly backed away. How boardrooms had started whispering the same word whenever his name came up: liability. He wasn't banned from the industry. But no one was opening the door. Either. Meanwhile, Vanessa had resurfaced, barely. A lukewarm podcast interview with a lifestyle influencer trying to stay neutral. In it, she played the victim. "I never meant to hurt anyone. Love is complicated." I didn't even know who Claire really was. The host nodded. Said something generic about healing journeys. It was laughable. I closed the tab halfway through. If that was her rebrand strategy, good luck. Grace and I had more important things to do. We were expanding. The Morgan Futures launch had attracted unexpected attention. Female founders across the country started reaching out, some with pitch decks, others just with ideas. Some had been burned by partners, others ignored by investors. Most just needed someone to say, yes, you're worth backing. We built a short list. Natalie ran due diligence. I personally called 3 of the founders myself. Every time I introduced myself, there was a pause. Wait, the Claire Morgan? I got used to it. I didn't hate it. At one point, Grace leaned over during a pitch session and whispered, "You realize you're becoming the story now, right?" I gave her a small smile. "I'd rather be the headline than the footnote." She grinned. "Now you sound like a Morgan." One night, Natalie invited me over for dinner at our parents' estate. I hadn't been back in months. Not since before the divorce went public. Dad met me at the door. He didn't hug me. He never was the hugging type. But he placed a hand briefly on my shoulder and said, "You look taller." "I'm wearing heels." "That's not what I meant." Over dinner, we talked business. He didn't ask about Daniel. Neither did my mother. That was their way of acknowledging him, by erasing him. It felt good. After dessert, Natalie poured us all a glass of wine and raised hers slightly. "To Claire," she said, "for finally walking like she owns the place." I clinked glasses with her. Not because I needed the toast, but because it was true. After dinner, my father pulled me aside. "I want you to take over one of the portfolios," he said. "Something clean. Not messy. Real assets. Quiet partners. No media glare." I tilted my head. "What's the catch?" "No catch. You've earned it." He paused. "And I want you to bring your vision to it. Not mine. Not Natalie's. Yours." I didn't answer right away. He added, "You've already proven you know how to take a fall and turn it into fuel. That's the only skill I ever cared about in this business." It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest he would ever come. And it was enough. I drove home that night with the windows down, the wind sharp against my face. The city looked different now. Not bigger. Not smaller. Just mine. Vanessa Brooks finally broke. It didn't happen in one dramatic crash. There was no public meltdown. No screaming match caught on camera. Just a quiet, steady unraveling. The kind that happens when someone builds their entire identity on borrowed attention and then no one's watching anymore. It started with a leaked email. A brand consultant posted it anonymously in a private Discord server that eventually got picked up by a gossip blog. "Vanessa's numbers are dropping. Engagement is fake. She's buying comments. Pull her from the launch." From there, things snowballed. One of her skincare partners announced a delay on their campaign. Then a fashion brand quietly scrubbed her from their website. The fitness app removed her image altogether. No explanations. Just silence. Social media noticed. "Where's Vanessa Brooks?" Started trending. The answer, nowhere that mattered. She tried to fight back with a soft launch blog post titled "Growth Isn't Always Linear." It opened with a blurry photo of ocean waves and closed with a quote about rising after the fall. Nobody shared it. Meanwhile, I kept building. Morgan Futures had just closed our second round of funding, with 2 Fortune 100 investors joining quietly behind the scenes. Grace and I flew to L.A. to meet with a group of entertainment startups, female-led. Digital first. No patience for corporate nonsense. It felt good to walk into rooms where my last name wasn't a liability. Where I didn't have to explain myself. Back in New York, Natalie texted me a photo. Vanessa. No makeup. Wearing a wrinkled sweatshirt and leggings. Pushing a grocery cart alone. The tabloid caption read, "Once the face of influence, now just another face in the crowd." I stared at the photo for a few seconds. Then I deleted it. Not because I felt bad for her, but because I genuinely didn't care anymore. That part of the story was over. Grace wasn't as detached. "She deserves worse," she said flatly. "Maybe," I replied. But I don't need her to suffer. I just need her out of the way. She's out. A few days later, Vanessa posted one final story, a black screen with white text. Thank you to everyone who supported me. I'm logging off for a while. Please be kind. That was it. Her accounts went dark. Her website redirect stopped working. Her name became an expired search term. She vanished from the internet faster than she rose. Daniel didn't show up to defend her. Of course he didn't. He was too busy trying to get back into rooms that now had locks with his name etched under Do Not Admit. At Morgan Futures, we launched a new grant program for first-time founders. We called it the Second Start. The offer came through a lawyer, neutral tone, carefully worded. A mid-sized media company under EdenTech's former umbrella had gone up for acquisition. Daniel's name was no longer on the board. But I recognized the shell structure. It was his baby. A digital production studio he started 4 years ago. Back when he thought content would build community and clout. Now it was hemorrhaging money. He was trying to sell it quietly before it completely collapsed. Grace forwarded the brief to me over breakfast. Look familiar? She asked, sipping her coffee. I didn't respond right away. Just scrolled through the details, valuations, staffing lists, outstanding debts. Then I saw it, an internal memo signed by Daniel, dated 6 months before our divorce. He'd used part of our joint marital funds to float the company during a bad quarter. Without telling me, I closed the folder. Make an offer, I said. Grace looked up. You want it? I want the paper trail. 2 weeks later, the deal closed. Morgan Futures acquired the company at less than 40% of its original value. We didn't make a public announcement. We just updated the name, restructured leadership, and replaced the creative team with people who actually knew what they were doing. The press barely noticed. Daniel did. He sent another email, this time with a subject line that read, "So you bought it." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a message to the new studio lead. Treat this like it never belonged to anyone else. Start clean. That afternoon, I walked through the building for the first time. It was strange. Stepping into a space I'd once visited in silence, back when I was just the wife. Offering coffee and staying out of meetings. Now my name was on the documents. My vision on the whiteboards. My decisions in motion. One of the younger editors recognized me from a profile the company had done about Morgan Futures. You're the new boss? She asked, eyes wide. I am. She nodded like it made sense. That evening, Natalie called. You're not bored of winning yet? She teased. Not even close. I heard Daniel's trying to get back in with a VC group in Chicago. They laughed him out of the Zoom room. I didn't laugh. I just said, good. Later, Grace dropped by the office with 2 milkshakes. For nostalgia, she said. We didn't have an office like this when we drank milkshakes before. I replied. True. We also didn't have a studio, a fund, and 3 pitch events in 1 week. I raised my milkshake. Progress. She clinked hers to mine. On the wall behind us, the new studio name had just gone up. Signal North Media. No mention of EdenTech. No echo of Daniel. Just a new story. Ours. Daniel didn't know I owned Signal North when he applied for a job there. I found out through HR. Apparently, his resume had come in through a recruiter. The studio had opened a senior strategy role, mid-level. Not glamorous, but stable. He must have been desperate. Grace sent me the application file with 1 line. You can't make this up. I opened the PDF. His credentials were all there, former CEO of EdenTech. Founder of digital initiatives. Speaker at half a dozen now-defunct panels. He even included a line about resilience through adversity. I nearly laughed. Should we reject him outright? HR asked. No. I said. Excuse me? Schedule the interview. Grace blinked. You serious? Completely. The next week, Daniel arrived at the office in a gray button-down shirt and slacks that had seen better tailoring. He looked smaller. Not physically. Just smaller. I watched the security feed from upstairs as he checked in with reception. He still had the voice, the posture, the practiced charm, but none of it landed the way it used to. The junior coordinator escorted him to the interview room. He smiled at her, tried a light joke. She didn't laugh. The hiring manager, unaware of our history, conducted the interview like any other. I had asked them to keep it neutral, professional. No special treatment. 30 minutes in, I stepped into the room. Daniel froze when he saw me. Claire. Mr. Grant. I said evenly, taking the seat beside the hiring manager. He looked between us. You work here? I own here. The silence stretched. I opened the folder in front of me. Let's continue. I didn't realize this was your company. He stammered. I'm aware. He cleared his throat. Well, I suppose that complicates things. It doesn't have to. I turned to the hiring manager. Please step out for a moment. When she was gone, I leaned forward. You applied for a job at a company I built, funded, and renamed after stripping it from the bones of the one you drained. He tried to meet my gaze. I didn't know. That part's obvious. He sat back. I've made mistakes. Correct. I've lost everything. I didn't correct that. He searched my face. Why even call me in? Just to humiliate me? No. I said. To see who you are without power. He didn't answer. I let the silence hang. Then I stood. We won't be moving forward. I said. Daniel looked like he had something to say. Some final plea. Some last swing at dignity. But he didn't speak. I walked out before he could. Outside, Grace was waiting in the hallway with 2 coffees. So? She asked. He's not the right fit. She smirked. That's one way to put it. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low behind the skyline, I sat in my office alone, not thinking about Daniel, not even thinking about the interview. Just still. The kind of still that doesn't mean silence, but arrival. The kind that tells you this chapter is done, and another one is waiting. Months passed. The press moved on. The headlines faded. No more stories about Daniel's fall or Vanessa's vanishing act. The world found new drama to obsess over. I stayed out of it. I didn't need the spotlight. I had work to do. Morgan Futures grew faster than we expected. The 3rd funding round closed early, and our portfolio had expanded into 5 industries: clean tech, health apps, digital media, education, and logistics. Grace took over expansion strategy. Natalie began prepping me for board seats I used to ignore. You don't get to hide behind silent investor anymore, she said one morning. I'm not hiding. I told her. She nodded. Exactly. I moved into a new apartment overlooking the East River. Nothing flashy. Just light. Quiet. Open. On Sundays, I read. On Tuesdays, I met with founders. On Fridays, I blocked off my calendar and did nothing. It was the best schedule I'd ever had. One afternoon, my father invited me to lunch. Just the 2 of us. We met at an old-school steakhouse he used to take clients to back in the day. He still ordered the same thing. Still refused the dessert menu on principle. Halfway through the meal, he looked at me and said, "You've done more with your fallout than most people do with their fortune." I raised an eyebrow. Was that supposed to be a compliment? He smiled. You know me better than that. I do. He didn't talk about Daniel. He never really had. But I knew he'd watched every step I took since the divorce. He paid attention in his own way. As we left the restaurant, he handed me a slim envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Another board seat. This one's yours. Not a favor. Not an inheritance. A vote." I held the envelope in my hand, the paper heavier than it looked. "I'll read it later," I said. He nodded. "Take your time. You've earned that too." Back at the office, Grace was already in my chair, spinning slowly while reviewing contracts. "You're late," she said. I was eating red meat with my father. Was it weird? Less than expected. She handed me a folder. 3 new pitches. 2 acquisition targets. And a founder who swears she's building the future of medicine from her garage. Garage founders always say that. Sometimes they're right. I took the folder, sat down, and looked out the window. The city didn't feel bigger or smaller. It felt possible. Across the street, I caught a glimpse of a man in a suit rushing past, a gray jacket. Sharp profile. Phone to his ear. For a second, I thought of Daniel. Then I didn't. He'd become a part of my backstory. A name without a headline. A man who used to think I couldn't win without him. I didn't just win. I changed the game. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt ready. There were no speeches. No slow claps. No music rising in the background. Just the sound of Grace flipping through papers and saying, "What do you want to build next?" And me replying, without hesitation, something that outlives the noise. It wasn't just branding. It was personal. At the launch party, one of the recipients, a woman who had been fired from her job after blowing the whistle on her former boss, told me quietly, "I thought no one would ever believe in me again." "You don't need everyone," I said. "You just need the right ones." She smiled like it was the first time anyone had said that to her. Afterward, Grace and I walked to a late dinner. She raised a toast over our cocktails. To building over burning. I tapped my glass to hers. Sometimes both help.